Welcome back to Autoimmune Adventures. Today, we are thrilled to welcome Helen Sheppard, a transformational artist, sound healer, and visionary voice mentor with over 25 years of experience bridging the music industry, therapeutic sound, and consciousness studies. Helen leads Sound Medicine Hub, where she creates bespoke affirmations and frequency-based vocal tracks that help unlock emotional blocks, restore harmony, and guide people to reclaim their authentic voices. She also writes under the name Andromeda Lightfoot and is the author of It's Time to Wake Up the Trees, a book that beautifully reflects her mission to weave creativity, healing, and transformation. Helen, we are so excited to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and it's great to meet you and talk to you. So yeah, thank you.
I guess first off, can you share with us a little bit about your journey from working with major labels like Sony and Warner to stepping into sound healing and transformational artistry?
Sure. It goes back a little bit further than the actual music business, because I grew up in a family, toxic family, it has to be said, of musicians and artists. So my dad was a musician and my mother was an artist and used to make underwear and send me back to convent school with naughty knickers. So there's not much to say about that, really, moving swiftly on. But she was a very spiritual woman. And when I actually did spend time with her, she taught me psycho-expansion, which is rather like quantum jumping, at the age of 9. And she was a spiritualist. So things that go bump in the night were always going bump in the night. So it was absolutely no kind of skin off my nose. You know, I grew up with that. So there was no fear of that. However, I did need to leave that behind in order to actually progress. And by the time I got to 17, I was already interested in alternative medicine, naturopathy and homeopathic medicine, and it was a toss-up between going into music and going into medicine, but music was my soul, so I had to do that. And at 17 I realized that sound could change the body. Sound, like disease, had frequency. Nobody told me this. I think sometimes we just come in with this knowledge. It's kind of inherent in us and we just remember it, don't we? And I was so determined to find the combination of, you know, if we could only find the combination, I remember saying that to myself, of the sound frequencies that would create, you know, the healing in the body that needs to happen, you know, in my childish way. That's what I was thinking. And I was invited actually when I was 18 to study that. But I was far too busy having fun making music to actually go into that. So I got my first record deal at 20 with Chrysalis Records, and I was writing very left field stuff, but they didn't like that. They wanted, you know, a blonde Kylie Minogue type of person. And so I wrote my first hit as a joke. It's like, oh my goodness. You know, I mean, it just brushed the top 40, but you had to sell records in those days. It was vinyl. So I was very dissatisfied and disgruntled already at the age of 20. But I carried on being the kind of person I am, and I pushed through, and then spent another 20 odd years in the music business, writing and performing, and being signed to various different companies like Sony Publishing, Epic Records, Capitol in the States. I came over to LA and played on the Capitol Tower, and did various tours for, you know, the British audience. And just, you know, I was just so frustrated because it was full of people who were not really on my wavelength, in the sense that they were too busy doing illegal things that they shouldn't do. And I got the nickname of the matron for a while because I was just not into that, you know. I just wasn't into it. I was into the music part. And the music that I was making was very kind of positive and deep. And I remember the publisher saying to me at Warner's, he said, Helen, I really like your music, but it's a little bit verbose. Can you just find one line and maybe repeat it a lot? And I just at that point thought, you know what? I'll tell you what, I'll repeat. And I left. And there really started, I think I must have been about 35. I started my journey, walking towards where I am now at nearly 60, because it just wasn't doing what I wanted it to do, so I started teaching. And then when I listened to people's voices, I could hear what was going on inside their bodies. And I could directly correlate, for example, a scale where they got stuck would correlate to, I don't know, maybe an organ or a bit in their spine that was hurting. And I started to speak. And most of the time I got it right. So that was a bit worrying for them as well. And so I thought, well, this is really interesting. And I carried on teaching for a long time because it was really beautiful to see people empowered. And rather than being out there doing me, in that, from that egotistical perspective, which was lovely when I was younger, but I just really love the process of empowering people through their own voices. And that love has continued. It never really stopped. And just hearing people be liberated, watching people go from being depressed to smiling, massive smiles, not being able to walk out the door, but walking in really, really down. And, this went on for a while. And when it must have been 2012, I think, when the real revelation happened. A lady with Parkinson's would come in once a week for singing lessons, and she'd come in with a foot that was turned in and a hand that was, stiff and just, sounding shrill and upset. And by the time an hour of singing had gone by, her hand had relaxed, it had opened the dopamine pathway, her foot was flat on the floor, and she was smiling. So it's been a lifetime's journey, really, going through all these various different things to bring me to the real understanding that sound and frequency does change the DNA, or can change the DNA, and that we respond best to our own voices. And when we liberate ourselves completely, and when our tongue is disciplined, and we're not, moaning about ourselves and other things, transformation can really, truly take place. And I've seen it happen both in myself and in the people that I've worked with. And recently, as the scientific side of the intuitive side of my work came into my life in the form of a voice analysis program. So as I said, I could hear things in people's voices that corresponded to what was going on in their body, in their mind and spirit. And then I would speak to them about that, and we would release it, or whatever. I was invited to come and work in this clinic that I was just talking to you about. And it had a voice analysis program, which basically analyzed the spectrum of the audible voice and the inaudible spectrum of the voice as well. So that would be the harmonic series and all the things that we can't hear outside of our audible spectrum, which is amazing. And from that, you can deduce what dissonances people are carrying in the form of disease, and what dissonances you could say emotionally and mentally. It measures the brain frequency. So it's like everything intuitively in a package. So the two things together, they work really well. Does that answer the first question?
Yes, that was lovely, Helen. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Can you explain what bespoke calibrated affirmations are, and frequency-based vocal tracks, how those play a part in helping people heal?
Yes. Okay. So the first thing is the affirmations. Now, there's no point in a sense, listening to other people's affirmations, because they're just too generic. They're not personal enough to you. Okay. So what I do is I spend time going through the decades of what has been spoken on to them. And we examine that and go deeply into that. And then from that point of revelation, we find the right affirmation to begin the process of neurogenesis and retraining the brain. Yeah. So if somebody had been abused, then, you know, we'd go through what they'd been through, and from that, it would be a personalized affirmation. And because we respond best to our own voices, even if we don't like our own voices, we respond best to them. That's science fact. It's just incredible to see when you record a person speaking to themselves, speaking to their own unconscious, the transformation that can happen if it's regular. You know, if everyone does it every day for 3 months, let's just say, you'll see the difference. You'll see the healing start. You'll see the forgiveness come. You'll see what can happen. It's quite extraordinary. So that's a bespoke affirmation. Also, listening to the person's tone. So, for example, would one of you like to say something like, I don't know, and I'll just try and find the tone.
I believe that today is a lovely day to take a walk.
It's there. Hang on a sec. You speak in G.
I speak in G.
You speak in G. There you move up and down in the G scale, but your root note is G. Okay, so that's so I would calibrate a piece of music to you, to that tone, and then if it was necessary, if I felt that it needed to come up a little bit, then I would work with that, because the intervals are really important, and each note corresponds to a different organ and a different part of the body. So let's just say you had a problem with your liver, then maybe we'd start with your G bass, and then we'd go up to the liver and, you know, modulate and see what happened. Hopefully something good would happen.
That's lovely and fascinating. I love that.
That's good.
Can you give us an example of some affirmations? I know, like you said, they need to be personalized for the person and their life, but if you could give our listeners some examples.
Okay, so can I work with one of you for a moment, and that would be easier for me to find the affirmation.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead.
So who would it be? Becky, is it?
Sure, I'll take a turn.
Yeah, turn. Okay, so can you think of? I know that you said you had a lovely childhood. So what if you were to go back to a particular trauma? Is there something that comes to mind, like maybe the first trauma that you experienced?
I guess I'm thinking of when I was a kid. I was helping my little brother get a Band-Aid. And I stepped up into my parents' bathroom sink, and I didn't know it, but there was a crack in their sink. And as light as a 5-year-old is, I still, like, it stepped and it cracked the sink all the way around. And I remember it sliced my ankle, but I didn't know it. Like, it did it cleanly enough. I didn't really feel it, but I saw the crack and I thought, oh, that had to have done something. So I lifted my foot and I looked at my right foot first and it was fine. And I looked at my left foot and it was really in bad shape. And even though it hadn't hurt to cut because I hadn't felt it, seeing it scared me. And I screamed loud enough that my mom, who was like clear at the other end of the house, heard and came running to see, you know, what in the world we were doing. And that, I might have had something earlier, but as far as like little traumas, you know, that was like the first thing that I can think of, I guess.
Great. Okay, thank you. And so what did your mother say when she saw you, first of all?
She was worried. And this was back in the day. We were not a very wealthy family. My dad would go to work. We only had one car at the time, and she was a stay-at-home mom. And so we actually had to go to our neighbors to ask them if they would take us to the emergency room, to the hospital, to get stitches. And I remember she, you know, she was a little bit concerned that she did the motherly thing of, you shouldn't have been climbing up the counter, but she didn't really chastise me a lot because she was more worried about me being hurt. and she
Okay.
didn't, you know, she handled it like a champ, honestly. Considering
Okay.
everything.
So what did you say to yourself about that then afterwards?
I said to myself that, you know, maybe like you said, there might have been a little self-loathing in that. I thought, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I should have gone and asked, you know, I should have asked a parent or somebody that can reach up into the cabinet that didn't have to climb. I should have asked somebody for help.
Okay. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there, because there's yeah. So asking for help. Right. So I always ask for help when I need it.
Yeah.
I always receive the help that I need.
That's great. I love that.
Okay, so that's just one thing there. Now your mum's saying, so yeah, because she was worried, right? And that's a frequency in itself, which really can be quite debilitating, especially if it's somebody else's worry, because you worry on top of their worry, and then it gets even worse. It's like a feedback situation, you know. So I mean, does worrying, do things worry you? Do you get worried?
It depends. Like, it depends on what it is. I admit that sometimes I will wake up in the middle of the night and think about irrational things and be worried. I sometimes have a little bit of nighttime anxiety. That's actually definitely comes with some of my autoimmune diseases, but yeah, I would say I
leads to
worry.
depression as well. Yeah, okay. So worrying leads to depression. And if you're worrying about worrying as well, like, you know, and all the rest of it. Okay, so how would I put that? So it has to be a positive statement. It has to be simple. Everything in my life always works out for the best. So yeah, because, you know, it does. It does. And the way, if it doesn't, it's because probably we're orchestrating that. And I think that the future of medicine is us taking responsibility on a really deep level for everything that we think, say, and do. And it's I think, very difficult path, because if you're observing yourself and also others, of course, you notice things, and you notice things that other people don't notice, and then that can be troubling as well. And so it's finding the keys and the tools to immediately bring it into the present moment and then release it. So those frequencies can be transformed in all sorts of different ways. Firstly, through the act of speaking, through the act of observance. So I was thinking about this the other day. The way that we observe something creates the reality that we live in. So it's the way that so that's perception. So if our perception is limited, then we need to expand. And when people say, oh, you must expand your consciousness, what does that actually mean? Well, it means, in a way, expanding the perception of what it is that you're observing, so that your reality has a different perspective. So it's a wider view. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Good.
That was a very excellent exercise. I appreciate that.
Okay, so yeah, we would do that probably for a few hours, really getting down to the nitty-gritty of what it is, what frequencies are holding you back, and what you're saying to yourself in order to, you know, keep perpetuating that thing. And, you know, it's not necessarily a cure-all, but for me, the revelation came when I read Genesis for the first time. And I don't subscribe to, you know, that narrative, but I love that book. And I also love other books that are, you know, that are of similar kind of status. But Genesis, it seemed like quantum physics all under one roof, you know, because you speak your world into being. And I think that we actually really do. And I've watched myself change my reactions to things through the way that I speak about it. So I don't own any disease. I don't own the things that, not in the sense that I don't take responsibility of them, but for them. But I don't say it's my knee pain or my bunions. Big clue in what I'm saying there. I tend to say the knee pain or the things that are happening. So it's much more from an objective point of view rather than actually kind of regurgitating it and thinking about it in the same way. So I think you need a circuit breaker, and those circuit breakers are the things that we say to ourselves and to others. Yeah.
Well, I will tell you, after that one, I will be running that affirmation, because definitely the I need help, like I will ask for help when I need it. My husband would say that would be a good one for me too. Yes.
We often joke amongst the three of us that we were raised by very do-it-yourself kind of people, and it's not that they expected us to do everything by ourselves. They were more than happy to hold our hand and teach us how to make bread, how to lay carpet, how to paint a house, how to roof a house, how to fix a car. I mean, we really are very, very self-sufficient because we were raised by people who were. But I think there's also the underpinning of they had no choice but to be self-sufficient. We were strapped money-wise.
Okay.
And you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
I do.
There is that underpinning that exists that I think then probably ties into the worry that we all tend to have because all three of us are worriers, and our mother was a worrier. And there's a framework there that could certainly be investigated, I think.
I think it's really interesting with money as well. Sorry, I interrupted.
No, by all means. I think that money does have a lot, and it's a struggle that a lot of people with chronic illness have, because even, for instance, I couldn't continue my full-time job because of my chronic illness. And I have found
I'm going to correct you. The chronic illness.
The chronic
illness.
Because
it's not
of the
yours
chronic
anymore.
illnesses that I have had to deal with.
Yes.
I had to rework my life and change it. And for me, that has been a blessing and a good thing.
Yeah.
However, initially, that's not how it felt. And if that is clear in what I mean. Like,
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I totally get that. And I would say that if I was to personalize that, I understand it because I've been through it myself, and it still pops up. When I'm not really listening to myself, I'm not really listening to, the source, or whatever you like to call it, God or divine guidance, or whatever it is, your higher self, the universe. When I don't listen, it's okay. Maybe the first time I don't listen, I get another sign or another nudge, and then I don't listen again, and I get a bigger nudge. And by the time the universe is screaming at me and I've got some kind of affliction, it's like, oh, maybe I should have listened, because on the other side of that darkness is where you're meant to be, isn't it? And it's like, I think we're taught to be so afraid, and taught to be afraid of that darkness, afraid of that moment of change and the transition that we go through. It's like if you hold that light within you, because you are it, you are that light, and you carry that light, and you keep walking until you know that you're directly underneath the sun. There's no shadow if you're directly underneath the sun. So yeah, it's kind of like, listening to ourselves is really important, isn't it?
I really think it is. I'm going to take a deep breath before I ask this one, because this one's very personal, and for me, it's a big deal.
Okay.
All right. Many of our listeners live with chronic illness or autoimmune conditions, which of course can affect their voices and take some important things from us. For instance, I was always part of show choirs, chorales. I was a drama girl. I did all kinds of plays and musicals. But since my diagnosis of Hashimoto's in my 30s, I have lost so much of my vocal range and quality. How might sound medicine or vocal work support someone walking this path of loss?
Ah, well, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, okay, and that was in 2021. And yes, I've noticed a few little differences in my voice, but with good vocal technique, you can completely get your voice back. I'll give you an example. So many years ago, I had this big, burly American Marine turn up for voice coaching. So he had this lovely deep range down here, big black range, it's beautiful. And then this lovely top range and absolutely nothing in the middle, because that's where he shouted by the left quick march. so, it was like literally, literally nothing there. So through the weeks, we worked on placement and taking his voice back to where it actually should be resonating. And he got his mid-range back. So everything is possible, okay? So it's good breathing, it's good diaphragm control, it's making sure that you're not pushing from your throat, that you're using your abs, your rectus abdominis needs to be used along with your diaphragm to control the amount of breath that's coming over the glottis. And then it's the relaxation, okay? So even if it does sound like a Gruffalo on a bad night out with Rod Stewart, it doesn't matter, okay? I think we're so quick to judge. Do you know what I mean? It's like we listen to ourselves, oh, that was horrible. It doesn't matter. It's a sound, and all sound is therapy. So, it's like when I first lived in London, coming up from Devon, I used to hear the sea in the background. And then I heard the cars in the background. So I would turn those cars into the sea and I would sleep and it would be fine. So it's just the way you look at things, isn't it? The way you perceive things, the way you perceive your own voice. So I've had people who've literally had maybe an octave if they've been lucky. And I've expanded with them, working with them, expanding to 3 octaves and maybe sometimes more, literally because of resonance. So if you, for example, sing a high note, you know that it's in the nasal cavity, the sinuses here, and also in the center of the head in the pineal gland. So as you come down the spine, so you come down the scale and the spine, you reach the nasal cavity, and then you come down to the upper pharynx. You keep it back. You sing at the back behind your uvula, which is the dingly dangly bit at the back of the throat. You don't come forward and kind of get all breathy. None of that. And then you take it to the lower pharynx and you take it deep into your windpipe, basically down into your chest. The lower the note, the more it resonates deeper in your body. Because if you think about it, I don't know where you are now in relation to what's outside of you, but you could probably hear things through the concrete and the bricks. You could probably hear maybe birds or cars passing. And that's what sound does. It penetrates our whole body and gives us an atomic massage. So even if our one note is just a just that, or if it's a doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because from that place, then you can start to open up. It's all about the vocal technique. And, my passagio or break point sometimes sounds like a really old lady, and I think, oh gosh, I'm sounding like Hinge and Brackets, terrible. And then really seriously, and then, just a little bit of work, a little bit of singing, a little bit of exercise. So, you can do a 45-minute exercise, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it is. As long as you just keep exercising and doing that technique correctly, you can solve all sorts of issues. And one of the biggest things is breathing. Breathing in through the mouth, expanding the diaphragm, and just not flopping when you're breathing out. So it's breath control to start with. Posture, not having your head forward like this, because you get totally a sore throat within 3 minutes. Yeah.
It actually gave me the most hope I've had in years. Honestly.
Seriously? Really?
Yes. Seriously, and very, very seriously. I have gone to doctors who have just said, This is part and parcel of your Hashimoto's. You are going to lose your voice more and more over time, and you will sound like a frog. And I do sometimes sound like a frog, and other days I don't. I mean, given I'm in Texas, the allergens are off the charts right now.
Yeah.
With that said, on a good day going in and having a doctor tell me that, it was extremely disheartening to me, because
Okay.
I said, you don't understand. I love to sing and I write music, and these are things that matter to me. So I would like you to give me a more positive thing. Well, we can send you to throat specialist. Maybe you've got problems with your vocal cords. Maybe they just need to send a camera down your throat. I've had all kinds of insanity given to me about this. And I'm just like, I don't need to be singing opera. I'm not at the Met, but I would love to be able to sing along with my favorite
Yeah.
songs on the radio and not feel like if anyone else is in the car with me, I'm going
Yeah.
to make them, you know,
Put earplugs
I
in.
just
Yeah, I
like to enjoy
understand.
music.
Yeah, totally understand. So there is another thing that a lot of people do, Hashimoto's or not, and that is that they tend to speak a little bit too low for themselves because they want to be taken seriously. And a lot of women tend to, especially if they're in the corporate world and they want to be, you know, and now you can hear that I'm croaking. Do you see? So, and it's like, actually, if they were to speak at their true pitch, you know, obviously it wouldn't be like that, but you know, it's like just raising it a microtone can help a lot. Come up just a tiny, tiny bit, then the croaking stops. So it's finding your pitch. So maybe you're not a G naturally, maybe you could be an A or a B or even a C. Do you know what I mean? Most people, human beings on a, you know, worldwide scale, resonate in C. Okay. And if you were to ask an audience, let's say you were playing Wembley Stadium or Carnegie Hall, okay, and if you asked them to randomly sing a note all at the same time, okay, so they mustn't think about it or listen to anybody else, just randomly open their mouths and sing, I would say that 99% of them would be singing C. Because, and that's a fact, you can try it yourselves, honestly, because that's where we resonate. And it's just slightly lower than middle C, so microtonally lower. Yeah. So I think it's really, you know, really understanding who we are, that we're instruments, that we're divine instruments, you know, here to express this incredible life. I mean, it is incredible, even if we're debilitated momentarily. I'm going to say momentarily because I trust and I believe, right? I sound like a preacher now. I believe that that it's all changeable. Okay. Pyotr Gurdjieff, in English you pronounce it Peter Gurdjieff. He was amazing. In 1998, this Russian scientist found that sound can be changed. Sound can change the DNA, and all that junk in our brains and junk DNA isn't junk at all. And he found so many things. He's an absolutely incredible person. He died sadly in, I think, 2020. But his work is profound. And it was actually through his work that I found out that we respond best to our own voices. So he had a team of people who were all working with the voice and so on. So yeah, very interesting.
Well, that kind of goes along with the question I was going to ask, which was, how is the role of the human voice kind of like, it sounds like we're talking about that's the best choice, but how do you compare it to like other instruments and other frequencies?
Okay, so obviously we understand ourselves best. Our frequency is unique to us. So, for example, we have a blood song as well. There was a guy called Jill Outrovitz, that was it, in the Crimson, gosh, it must be about 10 years ago now. He turned DNA into musical frequencies, only to find two things. Firstly, that we all have a unique blood song, okay, like a thumbprint. So nobody else has your song, which is absolutely incredible, okay? And then he took two cells from one body, one man's body, and one cell had this most beautiful, beautiful divine melody. It was really extraordinary, okay? And the other cell had that melody, but it had a going through it, right? And that's when they discovered that he had cancer.
Interesting.
And the frequency of cancer was the okay. So that kind of corroborated what I was saying in my thesis when I did it, which is how sound affects the mind, body, and spirit. So I can't remember what the question was. What was the question? I'm digressing.
Oh, just how do you see, like, how do you compare the human voice to other instruments in healing?
Okay, so for example, the tuning fork is subtle. It's really subtle sound, and it doesn't resonate audibly for very long. However, there's something that I've just written about, which is called stochastic resonance. When you add this resonance to a cell, you can actually hear what happens when it responds to these subtle sounds. It's absolutely incredible. So you can raise the voltage of the body with these subtle tuning fork sounds, or you could maybe, if you resonate well with a violin or a flute or whatever the instrument is, if you resonate with it, then that's going to have the greatest effect.
Thank you so much for joining us. It has really been a real joy and a treat for us.
Amazing to meet you, and thank you. Hope we meet again.